Well, friends, the day is finally here. When I say this has been a long time coming, this has been a long time coming, okay? Because we are finally gonna get into these books right here. Fuck. Interview with the Vampire and the Vampire Lestat. Yeah, we're getting into this. We're gonna get into this, and we're gonna get into it so good like we've never gotten into something before. Now, in the event that you are in fact unfamiliar with my channel, hi, I'm Ty, and I underwent a smear campaign at the behest of the Interview with the Vampire fandom, specifically the Lestat fans. How did we get here, do you ask? Well, at the end of December 2024, I released a hate video on the character of Lestat in the TV show Interview with the Vampire because I thought he was a fucking bitch. But apparently, this was the wrong opinion to have. Now, to be fair, most people were able to utilize their common sense. Most people were able to take what was in that video, have fun with it, and move on with their lives. But some people, some pathetic, desperate, hopeless individuals in this world still cling to that video as their lifeline of hate. They live, breathe, and bask in that video. And it's very perplexing to me that one could be so obsessed with the fictional character that for like 7-8 months you're still returning to the video to leave hate comments. I don't understand. I don't understand at all. No. Things got so out of hand with that video that apparently it reached the Lestat fans on Twitter, and there was like a big hate campaign on there. I personally never saw it. I never will see it. But I just think it's very interesting how passionate these people are about a fictional being. And it's like, you know what? Whatever floats your boat, honestly. You just look goofy. Like, I promise you, it is not that serious. And I expressed that in my follow-up video because I had to capitalize a little bit and, double down, stand on business, as it were, as the youth say these days, regarding my opinion and why it won't change until season 3 of the show premieres, and why even after I've read both of these books, my opinion still has not changed in regards to the show. Oh yes, y'all can't use that argument on me anymore. You can no longer say, oh, tell me you haven't read the books without telling me you haven't read the books. You can no longer use the books as your crutch because I've read them now. And all I have to say is y'all are fucking delusional. Like, y'all are the most delusional fan base to ever exist in anything. Like, what are we talking about? We are going to get into all of that, I promise. But I do want to express an appreciation for Lestat's character, having read The Vampire Lestat. I do think, I can understand why people love this character. I do get it, because, after reading the book, I kind of like him too. But that's the thing. I like book Lestat. We're going to get into the differences between book Lestat and show Lestat, and why I think it's so dumb for y'all to cling on to the book when you're evaluating his character on the show, because it is so incredibly dumb. It is so incredibly dumb. Like, literally, even the moments that y'all are like, see, it's like, okay, well, it didn't go down that way on the show, so... Like I said, we're going to get to all that, but a couple disclaimers. Number one, this is not a spoiler-free review. There are going to be spoilers littered all throughout this video. So if you're someone who only watches the show as I was, just keep in mind that a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about are probably going to be in the upcoming season of Interview with the Vampire, aka the Vampire Lestat. So if you have any qualms about being spoiled, don't watch this video, because I'm not gonna be avoiding them. Also, this review is definitely gonna be all over the place. This is not gonna be a deep dive analysis. It's not gonna be a beat by beat exploration of these characters and the story being told. I ain't got time for all that shit, okay? I'm just here to give a basic rundown of the things that transpire in the books, what I feel about them, and how I feel having read the books and watched the show. And at this point, I have watched the movie that is also on my channel. Go ahead and check that out if you care to. So yeah, that's just the basic rundown of what I'm gonna be doing. So we could go ahead and get into this, okay? So first things first. This right here, this is where it all began, okay? Now, let me say this. The books absolutely do a wonderful job of exploring the psychology of these vampires, because, oh my, like, bro, you just feel it. You just feel the depth of their woe. And it's like, bro, it's not I feel like I don't think there's a single moment of happiness in this book. Like, I don't think Louis expresses happiness at all in any page of this book. And if he does, I don't remember it. That's how fleeting it is, okay? Like, the man is just, this is Woe Is Me, the book. That's all it is. And to that end, I don't really have too much to say about Interview with the Vampire. It was fun to see the parallels between the original book and the TV show. That was fun. And, you know, obviously y'all know I ride for Claudia. It was fun to see her in the body of a 5-year-old as opposed to a 14-year-old in the show. And I think she was like 9, 10, 11 in the movie, one of those. So it's definitely been interesting exploring her character at these different stages of childhood. But before we get too deep into things, I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't mention the weird racial stuff. Let me not say weird, but there's some racial stuff that happens in these books. Number one, first of all, Louis is a slave owner. And like, here's the thing. The way Anne tries to frame Louis in the first book, it's like he's a good slave owner. He never outright abuses his slaves. And so I feel like that makes him more digestible as a character who is a slave owner. But it's just like, come on, like, being a slave owner is inherently evil. I don't give a damn what you have to say about that. Yeah, I just feel like it's interesting that it was a very deliberate attempt to paint him in the light of not being a horrible person. But, you know, if you're owning people, as was the norm of the time, but that doesn't make it any less fucking despicable. But it's not even just that, because, like, as crazy as it sounds, I could, with my black ass sitting in this chair, I can't believe I'm about to say this. I could almost overlook the fact that Louis was a slave owner, except that the racial stuff becomes so much more prevalent in this book. I have a lot more notes, as you can see, in comparison to this one, because this one, it was more of a deep dive of what we already saw in the show, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? So nothing super surprising happened in this book, but a lot of surprising things happened in this book. I can't wait to talk about this bitch, because whoa, the lore in this, and then the ending, my God. Also, this book is basically falling apart. Like, look, like, I don't know how to take care of a book. And look at y'all, look, pages falling out. I don't know why, don't ask me. Anyway, where was I? Race stuff. So it stuck out to me a lot more in the back half of this book. And I want to read a couple passages. Now, I want y'all to bear with me, and I actually want you to tell me if I'm being the too woke friend. But you have to listen to everything. And I genuinely want to hear your responses to this stuff. But just like, give me the time to properly express and articulate what I'm trying to articulate before you get in the comments trying to beat me up, because I fight back. But before you get in the comments trying to beat me up, just like calm down, relax. I'm not saying Anne Rice is racist. I'm just saying the framing of some of this stuff is a little weird, a little suspicious. Okay, so here's the thing. We're gonna skip to, what page is this? 383 of The Vampire Lestat. And I'm just gonna read this passage to you. And again, bear with me, okay? In the context of this story, we are learning Marius' story. Marius is an ancient vampire who comes into contact with Lestat. We're gonna get a little bit more into him later on. For right now, just know that Marius is an ancient vampire and he is telling a story to Lestat. So he says, I had to fall into the hands of the barbarians who gave us both our stature, our blue eyes, our fair hair. I had it through the blood of my mother who had come from those people, the daughter of a Celtic chieftain married to a Roman patrician. And you have it through the blood of your fathers directly from those days. And by a strange coincidence, we were both chosen for immortality for the very same reason. You by Magnus and I by my captors, that we were the whatever, of our blood, and blue-eyed race, that we were taller and more finely made than other men. So, like, here's the thing. Like, obviously, I'm not gonna sit here and say that these are Anne Rice's sentiments, that she believes blue-eyed, blonde-haired, tall white men are like the epitome of perfection. You know what I'm saying? But the reason it's questionable is because later on page 483, Has encountered the mother and father vampire, Akasha and Ankil. Enkil? How do you say that name? Enkil is how we're gonna pronounce the name. Okay, so Lestat comes across Akasha and Enkil. There's a lot of lore behind this. Basically, these individuals are like statues, but they're not. They're living vampires. They are the most ancient of vampires as far as we know. I'll get more into that later. The point is he encounters these vampires because Marius has them under his watch. And so this is how Lestat describes them. And I stopped just inside the chapel, and I looked at their faces, and they seemed as before to look directly at me. White. So white I cannot imagine them bronzed, and as hard it seemed as the jewels they wore. Okay, so mind you, Akasha and Enkil were rulers in Egypt. Like, they were the king and queen. Akasha, I believe she originally hailed from ancient Iraq. I did a little bit of research before I sat down to talk about this. And it's just so funny to me that even the people of color did not have the luxury of not being white in this book. And the thing is, within the established lore, as you age, as you become an ancient, your skin whitens. That's part of the lore. You become more white, right? But the thing is, almost every time we're introduced to a vampire, they're described as having beautiful white skin, just this white porcelain, just beauty incarnate. And with age, they're all supposed to reach the epitome of that. And it's just fucking white. Like, just whiteness. Like, you're just white. You're perfect when you're white. You're a perfect vampire when you're white. You know what I'm saying? And part of me feels like it's a reach, But another part of me is like, that's suspicious. That's weird. I did see that some other people had issues with like racial stuff in her books. I haven't done too much of a deep dive into it. These are just the things that like pricked my brain when I read them. Like, oh, hold on now. Like, wait a minute. We got a little too much dip on our chip right now. Because again, Akasha and Enkil were rulers in Egypt. Obviously, because I know there's gonna be those people in the comments. Obviously, there are lighter skinned people in these places, but it's just like, damn, like it comes to a point like, bro, can I have something? Can my people have something? And you know what? That's why I respect the TV show, because Louis is black as hell. But you know what? The fact that I'm really not the only person who points out weird race stuff in the books should honestly kind of be telling, because the fact that a lot of the hate that I received, and I had people telling me this, again, I didn't see the hate for myself because, I don't care about these losers, but people were indeed telling me that I was receiving a lot of racial backlash, like not just backlash because I dislike a character, it became racist. And so it's very interesting to me that the defenders of this book in particular were also the same people who apparently were spewing racial attacks my way. And 2 + 2 = 4. I don't know. Argue about it in the comments. We're moving on. So the books give an interesting insight to what being a vampire means and how romanticized the connections are, almost to a very odd degree. And what I mean by this, specifically, like, I know it was glaring with Claudia and Louis. It was like borderline sus, because again, this is a 5-year-old girl, at first, and then obviously her brain ages, whatever, her psyche, but like the image of her being 5 years old is still in my head when I'm reading some of these lines, and it's just like, ew. And I'm gonna give you an example. Here we go. So page 101 of Interview with the Vampire reads, but she lived to put her arms around my neck and press her tiny cupid's bow to my lips and put her gleaming eye to my eye until our lashes touched, and laughing, we reeled about the room as if to the wildest waltz, father and daughter, lover and lover. And okay, like that's tame, but I'm still like, father and daughter, lover and lover, hello, sweet home Alabama, I don't know. But there's more than this. Here, page 103. And the coffin maker, shaken with the tragedy of it, must make it for her, picturing her laid there on the white satin, dabbing a tear from his eye despite all the years. But why, Claudia? I pleaded with her. I loathed to do it. Loathed cat and mouse with the helpless human, but hopelessly her lover. There's that lover word again. So these bonds are really, really romanticized. And you know, with what the story is trying to do, how it's trying to construct these relationships and explore the vampire nature, I did, you know, push it to the back of my mind like, okay, don't be weird about it. This is just poetic language. Because Miss Rice, may she rest in peace, the girl loves some purple prose, like the flowery language. There have been so many times when I was reading these books that I had to reread lines over and over to try and understand what she was trying to convey, and I still simply could not understand it. The woman had a way with words, and I don't know if it was always sensical, but she had her way. She certainly had her way. But it's not just the relationships themselves that are highly romanticized. It's the kill, the drinking of blood. And I'll show you another example specific to when Claudia is preparing to kill Lestat. And they had the two boys in the room and Lestat's like preparing to drink out of one. Page 134. And Lestat slid down off the cushions of the couch to his knees on the floor, his arm locked to the boy's body, pulling it up close to him so that his face was buried in the boy's neck. His lips moved over the neck and over the chest and over the tiny nipple of the chest. And then putting his arm into the open shirt so that the boy lay hopelessly wound in both arms. He drew the boy up tight and sank his teeth into his throat. Now, mind you, these are little boys. Like, they're children, quite literally. Page 133. When I reached the door and I took my time, he was bending over the settee. Two small boys lay there, nestled among the soft velvet pillows, totally abandoned to sleep as children can be, their pink mouths open, their small round faces utterly smooth. Children, and this man Lestat is like damn near licking a child's nipple. Like, bro, like, I'm not crazy. This shit is it's a little weird. And I understand they're vampires, like blah blah, shut up, shut the fuck up. Oh my god, y'all are annoying. Cause y'all just brush everything off because, oh, it's gothic media, bitch, shut up. I know. But anyway, those were just some of the examples to display just, you know, how romanticized vampirism is in these books, to the point where like familial relationships become a little strange. Like Lestat in the second book, he turns his mother Gabrielle into a vampire, and their ways of showing affection to each other, often it's kisses, and yes, that includes on the lips. And it's like, because I know people who kiss their children on the lips, but Lestat's a grown-ass man at this point, an undead grown-ass man. And just the way that it's conveyed, it's so romanticized. It's like Louis and Claudia, where they're like lovers, but it's like they're still mother and father. And it's just such an interesting choice, an interesting way to convey just what these relationships are, and just the strength of the vampire connection in their pursuits of not being lonely, because that essentially is what it is. The world of vampires is a very lonely world, and you really feel that. So of course these connections are intense, they're enthralling, and they ignite so quickly. And when I mean they ignite quickly, I mean they ignite quickly, which brings me to the Vampire Lestat. Okay, so let's talk about it. So first of all, it's basically just a rundown of where Lestat came from, how he became a vampire, and then, you know, retconning the first book essentially. So many things in the first book, I'll say. In this tale, we're introduced to Lestat's maker, Magnus. Now, Magnus literally kidnaps Lestat in the middle of the night from his room and like takes him to a fucking chamber and like turns him into a vampire. Lestat, this whole time, he's like kicking, screaming, he's cursing at Magnus. And the moment Magnus drinks from him and Lestat in turn drinks from Magnus, it's like Lestat falls head over heel for Magnus. And I do understand it's the vampire bond thing at play. The way Anne Rice depicts stuff like this, it is very believable that these vampires would instantly love each other, because that's what it is. It's very insta-lovey. Because even after this man just dragged you from your fucking bedroom and you're crying like, no, leave me alone, help me, help me, help me, and then he turns you to a vampire and you're like, oh my god, I love you. It's that real for them. It is that real for them. And then the fucked up part about it is Magnus kills himself. He throws himself into the fire. That's not funny. He throws himself into the fire, literally leaves Lestat, you know, some money, you know, some clothes. And then he just ends himself. Doesn't tell him anything about the vampire world. Doesn't give him any pointers. Nothing. He just tells him like, yo, carry on. Bye. And then throws himself into the fire. But he did say something interesting. And I thought this was such an interesting detail. And it made me have hope for Claudia. Because we all know what happened to Claudia, right? Right. And we're going to talk about that at the end too. But it made me have some type of hope for Claudia. Because it was like Magnus had told Lestat to scatter his ashes lest he come back, something along those lines. And I was like, wait, does that mean Claudia can come back to life if her ashes didn't get scattered? But it wasn't that. It was basically like a vampire can't be at peace unless their ashes are scattered, which, you know, I just feel like that was some bullshit because I want Claudia to come back. Like, I want her to come back on the show mainly. That's what it is. I'm coping. But anyway, yeah, Lestat is grieving Magnus like, oh my God, he left me. Oh my God. And, you know, he goes on through the months being a vampire. And all along, there's this presence that he feels every now and again. And we come to learn that this presence is actually a coven of vampires. Forgot to mention, all of this is taking place in Paris. Lestat isn't originally from Paris. He's from like this little village where he, you know, kills wolves and shit in the winter to provide food for his family. Like, he provides for his family, and his family was not appreciative, except for his mother, Gabrielle. I love Gabrielle. She's so cool. Anyway, Lestat had dreams of being a performer and, you know, being in plays and performing in Paris with his friend Nicholas, aka Nicky. And so, yeah, they eventually just run away to Paris together. I'm pretty sure Gabrielle encouraged Lestat to run away to Paris. So yeah, that's how Lestat ends up in Paris with Nicky. Nicky plays the violin, and, you know, they both perform at this theater. Lestat is an actor, blah, blah, blah. He puts on shows. Anyway, after he becomes a vampire, that all comes to a halt. He is living out his vampire days in Paris, and, you know, the presence that he was feeling all the while, every once in a while, was the coven. And who was the leader of this coven? Armand. Okay, we're gonna get to Armand later too, because this man is just like fucking Louis. Like, just sad and pathetic. Just don't got nothing going on. Just angry, just mad at the world. Anyway, this coven, their ideals, their rules, their rituals are very rooted in ancient times or ancient traditions. To them, you're not supposed to enter a chapel, a church. You're not supposed to live among mortals, because they count that as blasphemy against God, because they are beings who are supposed to be serving the devil and blah, 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 blah. So they held a lot of malice for Lestat in the months that he was roaming free. And then he ended up turning his mother into a vampire. So what happened there was Gabrielle, she was suffering from illness. Her days were numbered. She came to Paris to be with Lestat in her last days or whatever. And in the room she was in, Lestat turned her into a vampire. And so from there, they're just together, and they are doing vampire shit together. And so this further enrages the coven, because it's like, okay, now you're doing too much. And so eventually the coven makes themselves known, and they fucking kidnap Nicky. And Lestat's like, oh, hell no, that's my man, because they were basically boyfriends. They would have these long conversations, which they called Our Conversation, or The Conversation, something like that. Just about life, death, good, evil, God, the devil, all of these things. They would talk about things of this nature for hours upon hours upon hours upon hours. And in that, they had formed a really special bond and love for one another. So the fact that the coven had taken Nicky had Lestat in a rage. He was like, oh, y'all got me fucked up, right? So he goes to confront the coven, and obviously Armand is the leader, and they're like, bro, you don't even know how many rules you've broken. You need to die. And essentially Lestat uses talk no jutsu on them, and the coven basically comes to an end. Like, he just fucking dismantles the coven. He takes Nicky and Gabrielle back to Magnus's tower, you know, the place where Magnus turned Lestat. And Nikki's mad at him because he's like, bro, you've as many conversations about good and evil, God, the devil, all of this shit, and you've had this power, you didn't tell me, you didn't share with me, you didn't do any of this. And then Lestat turns him into a fucking vampire. And then he like literally starts hating Nikki. He's like fucking disgusted with Nikki, and it's like, bro, like, Lestat, are you ever gonna make a fucking vampire that you don't hate? First Nikki, then seemingly Louis, and then Claudia, and it's just like, bro, like, why do you always come off like you hate your fucking fledglings? Like, you need to like get it together, okay? But with Nikki, it was especially terrible because like he just couldn't bear to see Nikki in death. And he couldn't bear to see what he had made him. And he, like, Nikki's soul was essentially just corrupted to Lestat at that point, like, bruh. And Nikki literally lost his mind a very short time afterwards. Like, he ended up throwing himself into the fire too. So, rest in peace, Nikki. Meanwhile, all of this nonsense is going on. Armand is fucking murdering members of his coven who are like free now, because he's just a piece of shit. He's like killing them, and then members of the coven, you know, they meet up with Lestat and they're like, yo, we're all that's left. It's like, what was it, like four of them, 6 of them, something. It was a very small number of them left. And it was like, yo, Armand's like been killing us. He is upset at this situation. And so Lestat ends up giving them the theater that he owned and giving them money. And he's like, yo, live out your days working the theater, putting on shows, etc., etc. And that's how the theater of the vampires came to be. Blase, blase, blah. Now Gabrielle and Lestat are like, okay, we need to get out of Paris. This is no longer home. We need to go. Armand's like, OMG, take me with you. Lestat and Gabrielle are like, fuck no. And they leave his ass in Paris. And then they travel the world together. They go to different countries, whatever, and they eventually come to Cairo, Egypt. And at this point, Gabrielle parts ways with Lestat because she wants to live her life away from mortals. But Lestat, he's too connected to them. He's too infatuated with them. He can't let mortals go. And she was like, I gotta let you go. I just have to leave you, unfortunately. And it was a very sad moment for both of them. And you know what? I feel like it's so weird because I had read a comment under one of my videos that had said Gabrielle didn't actually care for Lestat, and I didn't get that vibe at all. I got the feeling that she was distanced from him because as they were traveling the world together, she would disappear for days, weeks, months at a time. And so obviously they were growing distant, but I never got the vibe that they didn't love each other. Even when they were partying, she was crying, you know, she was very emotional, and so was he. And it was like, I don't understand. Maybe it's something in the future books that made them leave a comment like that. But I found myself, as I was reading, I was kind of looking for that moment where it was like, oh yeah, Gabrielle really don't give a shit about her son. But she did. She always did. And that was even shown at the end of the book that she cared about him. But I'm moving ahead. I'm getting ahead of myself. So anyway, during their travels, before they parted ways, Lestat had been leaving various messages behind for an ancient vampire named Marius or Marius. I'm just gonna say Marius. And the reason he was doing this is because he discovered that Marius was Armand's maker. And he knew that because Armand had, you know, gave him a little about his backstory. And you know, Armand's backstory is kind of tragic too. That man was a slave. A lot of slave stuff going on in these books. But no, on a serious note, Marius had discovered Armand, and he kept him for years before he actually turned him to a vampire, which Marius actually, when we meet Marius, he did go on to express he regretted turning Armand so young because he concedes that, you know, some of the coven's rules had wisdom to them, like i.e. not changing someone who is very young. You know what I mean? But anyway, so Lestat was so infatuated with the story of Marius because it was said that Marius was found by another coven, other children of darkness, and they threw him into the fire and he just died. But Lestat figured that Marius was still alive because he's supposed to be an ancient. He's supposed to be so powerful. He's supposed to be able to withstand more than the average vampire. So Lestat had it in his heart that Marius was still alive. So he's like carving out messages at each of their stops, like, telling him where he is, where he's gonna be, etc., etc. And he's like thinking about him, calling out to Marius, like, Marius, Marius, are you listening? Type shit, you know? So after Lestat and Gabrielle depart, Marius eventually finds Lestat. And at this point, Lestat had gone into the ground. And that was a trick that he had learned from Gabrielle. She was just so ahead of her time. What a queen. But he had decided to go into the ground because he just couldn't take it anymore. He was losing everything and everyone. It was just like, kill me. But Marius had come to him because he knew where he was, and he had gave Lestat some blood, you know, replenished him, and then he took him on a boat ride back to this little island that he owned or looked after. And it is here where we get the story of Marius. And honestly, I feel like the story of Marius, like, bro, the amount of lore, the amount of information we receive from Marius. Mind you, Marius is almost 2,000 years fucking old. Oh, yeah, at this point in the story, Marius is almost 2,000 years old. So he takes Lestat, you know, allows Lestat to get his strength back, whatever. And then they have a sit down. And here Marius tells him his backstory. I'm not gonna go beat by beat by beat. Like I'm not doing all that shit, okay? But we find out that Marius was basically scouted. That passage that I read to you about these individuals searching for blue-eyed, blonde-haired, tall, white men. Yeah, so it was essentially a group of followers who worship, what do they call it? The god of the grove, which is a vampire, but back then they were referring to them as gods. Back in Marius's time, they were referring to them as gods. But something was wrong with the current god of the grove because, like, he had spontaneously combusted into flames, and it was happening all over the world. All the vampires had got set on fire randomly, and everybody's like, what the hell is going on? Why is that happening? What the fuck? Why did everybody just fucking burn? And there were some who survived, but a lot of them died too. But the god of the grove was one of them who survived because, you know, he was a little bit older, a little bit more powerful, whatever. So the god of the grove has sent his followers like, hey, yo, y'all need to find a replacement for me because I'm not gonna be healed and fully restored for centuries because I'm all charred and darkened and blackened. His followers end up scouting Marius, and they kidnap Marius because, you know, people love kidnapping in these books. The follower that's kind of at the forefront of this situation is Mael, and Mael is the one who's telling Marius, like, you are the one who will replace our god, and, you know, you were chosen, basically. So anyway, they keep Marius locked up for a while, and then the time comes where they do the little ceremony. Marius meets the god of the grove, and the god of the grove is like, hey, yo, we need to figure out what the fuck is going on. All of our fucking people have just burnt up. And being that you're about to become one of us, I need you, when the ceremony is over, to get the fuck out of here, go to Egypt, and figure out what the hell is going on from the ancient vampires. So that's the plan. The plan is for the god of the grove, the vampire, to make Marius a vampire and have Marius flee from the rest of the followers because they were gonna keep him trapped. Like, it's weird. It's like this big ass tree. They have a bunch of rocks, a bunch of boulders or whatever covering a metal door. And, you know, you open the metal door and there's a staircase that leads down into the earth, and that's where the god of the grove is. It's a big ass fucking tree hideout, and the god of the grove just stays there in between seasons. Like, they starve him, and then once a month on the full moon or whatever, they bring him the sacrifices. It's a whole lot of. Anyway, the followers after the ceremony planned on keeping Marius in that tree, and they were going to do away with the god of the grove. They were just going to cast him into the fire. So he was like, yo, it's imperative that you run after you receive these powers. You gotta go and figure out what is happening to us. And so Marius, driven by just pure curiosity, because all of this is exciting Marius. He's like, oh my gosh, my life up to this point means nothing. This is some juicy, deep shit. Oh my God, I'm in for the adventure of my life. So he's all in. He's like, bet. So after the ceremony is done, he darts through the woods and he loses the followers and he goes to Egypt. He goes to Egypt, and there he does come across the other charred vampires who have suffered the burns. And there's an elder he comes across who eventually tells him the story of the mother and father vampire. And the mother and father vampire are Akasha and Enkil. But Akasha and Enkil are currently, as Marius is retelling this tale to Lestat, they are currently under Marius's care. So it's like, oh my God, how did the original vampire, that's what they are. They're basically the originals. Y'all know the Vampire Diaries? Yeah. They're the first vampires, as far as we know. So it's like, oh my God, how did he get a hold of them? Mind you, they're basically like statues, but they're not. They're like the embodiment of the porcelain dolls. They're like weeping angels, except they're not actually statues. Their skin is described as marble. They're just like super white, smooth, as I described earlier, but they're like completely still. They rarely move. And it's creepy. They are very eerie individuals, and they're hard to move. Like, they're hard for vampires to physically move because they're like stone. They're like stuck in place, but they're not. They can move when they want to move. They just simply choose not to. And they also don't talk except for Akasha, but that comes, again, I'm getting ahead of myself. So anyway, what Marius learned from the elder vampire about the original vampires, the mother and the father, they were the rulers of the city of Kemet, whatever. And they were trying to lead the people in a manner of peace and civility. They didn't want wars and death and all that shit. But something had happened in one of the stewardesses' homes where it was like a demon was present, and it was like thrashing furniture around, and it was angry and malicious. And so the lore of the demons in question is that they're angry because they don't have human bodies to possess or whatever, you know what I mean? So Enkil had decided to go confront this demon in the stewardess's home, and Akasha eventually joins him in the home. But there are these rebels, like people who didn't like them ruling because they were too peaceful. Like the people in question who didn't like them, they like to eat people. They were cannibals, and I don't know, they were just weirdos. They just wanted war and destruction, and yeah, they wanted fucking anarchy. That's the gist of it. And they're like, oh my God, this is our chance. Let's do away with the king and queen. So them rebels, you know, they barge into the home and they stab up Akasha and Enkil. And apparently through this, the demon was able to enter their stab wounds into their bodies, and that's how they became the vampires. Essentially, vampires are like just demons, and it's demon blood that keeps them alive and all of that. And it's like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? What do you mean? And I know there's a book in the Vampire Chronicles, something about the devil. I don't know if I'm gonna read that far though. I'm definitely gonna read Queen of the Damned. I have it in my room. I'm definitely gonna read Queen of the Damned because after the way the Vampire Lestat ended, there's just no way I'm not going to read that book. I feel like I might actually press on with the series after the Queen of the Damned. I know I expressed previously that I wasn't gonna read beyond Queen of the Damned, but I just feel like I'm in it now. Like, I just feel like I'm in it. I'm here, I'm queer, and I ain't going anywhere. But I'm not a rapper. Anyway, where was I? So the vampires are vampires now, and they're the first vampires, and blah, 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 blah. Now, the explanation for why all of the current vampires, and current meaning in Marius's time when he had first become a vampire, the reason why vampires around the world had went up into flames is because somebody who was supposed to be watching Enkil and Akasha drugged them out into the desert sands and into the sun. And the reason they did that was because as the years went on, Akasha and Enkil, they stopped communicating, because before it wasn't like that. They weren't like statues before. They would allow people to drink from them. They would speak. They ruled Egypt at a certain point. And so, but as the years went by, and as other vampires were like taking advantage of them, kind of holding them hostage or whatever, it got to the point where they just didn't speak anymore. They were like basically catatonic. And so you can imagine centuries and centuries and centuries pass, and the legend is now just a legend. It's like, okay, well, how do we know for sure that these are the original vampires? How do we know for sure that if they die, that we die? Because that is also a part of the lore. If the king and the queen die, then all the vampires will die, because all vampires come from them. But at this point in time, it's like, is that even true? Do we know that for sure? And the person who was supposed to be watching them, who was keeping watch over them to make sure that they were okay in their little chamber, their little tomb, whatever it was, he kind of went crazy. He was like, they don't move, they don't speak, they don't allow us to drink from them anymore. This is some bullshit. I'm dragging them into the sun just to see if it's gonna happen. And then it did happen. But the thing is, the king and queen, they didn't combust. They didn't get set aflame. They merely like darkened a little bit, and that was it. Like their skin bronzed, as it was described, but they didn't really suffer heavy damage. But the rest of the vampires, because the king and queen were exposed to the sun, the rest of the vampires, you know, they're not as strong and powerful as them. So the effects of the original vampires being out in the sun, it was a lot greater for the rest of the vampires, and they all either just died, you know, burned to ashes, or the ones who are powerful enough to withstand it to some degree are just blackened, charred, just very injured, and they just won't be healed for hundreds of years. But we find out that the person who drugged the king and queen out into the desert sands to be met with the sun was the elder that was telling Marius the story. And I kind of pieced it together when he was first like, yeah, someone put them out in the sun. I was like, it was you. It was you. I know it was you, bitch. It was clearly you. But anyway, it is eventually revealed that it was the elder vampire who had brought Akasha and Enkil out into the sun, and Marius goes to find Akasha and Enkil himself. But the tea is, Akasha had actually sought him out, and she was like, hey yo, and it was like telepathy. She was like, hey yo, you need to bring us out of Egypt. We are in danger. We need to go. And so Marius was like, bet. So he went to go find them, and he's like, okay. So yeah, he takes them, and they allow him to take them. And then the elder vampire who had told him the story was like, hey yo, you think I'm gonna really let you take them? And Marius is like, bro, you the one who put them into the fire, bro. You almost ruined our whole you almost fucking killed everybody. And the elder's like, man, fuck all that, what you talking about? I don't give a damn. You're not leaving with them. And so like a fight, you know, ensues. But then Akasha comes up out of the dirt where Marius had buried them, because that's how that's where he was keeping them, you know, for safekeeping. He had buried them in little boxes or whatever, and then when it was gonna be time to leave, he was gonna dig them back up. But Akasha, she rises and she's like, oh, what was said? And then so she ends up attacking the elder, and she stomps him out. And I don't mean like boom, boom, boom. She simply walks over his body. She don't need to apply much force. She just walks over his body, squishes this man's head to a pulp, and then sets the viscera on fire. When I tell you the lore of Marius's story was the peak of the, well, actually, I don't know. Nah, I would say it was the peak. It was the peak of this book. I don't care what nobody says. But also the thing about it is, it's very annoying, because even the story that we're told about the origins of the vampires can't be trusted, because the elder, in his confrontation with Marius at the end, he was like, you know, I've lied to you more than once, like implying that some of the things he said about the origins of the vampires is untrue, which is very annoying. But for now, I'm gonna take it as face value that, you know, a bunch of people stabbed the king and queen, and then the demon was able to enter their bodies that way. I don't know. It seems reasonable to me. Anyway, the elder's dead, and so, you know, Marius packs up Enkil and Akasha, and from then on, he was their caretaker, and that's how he has them stored in a chamber on his island. And Marius, I really like Marius. He real cool. He has the whole place decorated all nice. Like he has beautiful scenery for them. He brings them victims so they can drink the blood, but they don't drink often. And it's like, they're just very mysterious, enigmatic creatures. And something about them is so eerie and alluring, which draws in Lestat. And so at this point, Nikki is dead. In the midst of Gabrielle and Lestat's travels, Nikki died because he just went crazy. So Lestat ends up, you know, getting a hold of the violin that Nikki used to play. And he had the bright idea to go down to Akasha and Enkil and play the violin for them, to which Akasha rises because apparently it moves her. And she's like, like singing along with the music or something, but it's so loud, it's piercing Lestat's brain, his eardrums. He's like, oh my god, this fucking noise. But he just keeps playing and he keeps playing, and she's like, oh, whatever noise she's making. And then she like comes to him and she allows him to drink from her. But apparently that was not the thing to do, because Enkil came in like, bitch, I think the fuck not. And he fucking yeets Lestat off of Akasha, and he grabs hold of his head like this, and I thought he was gonna squeeze Lestat's brain, but he eventually lets Lestat, you know, fall to the floor, and he puts his foot to Lestat's chest, and he's about to crush him like Akasha did the Elder. And I was like, oh my god, like he don't play about his woman, like he don't play about her. He Miss Akasha, he don't play about her. But luckily Marius comes in, saves the day. He's like, no, you can't do this, back off, and he's telling Lestat to run, and I'm like, yeah, get the fuck out of there. So then Lestat, you know, he has to leave soon after that, because Enkil's like, bro, if this man doesn't leave this fucking island, I'ma crash out. And so Marius is like, oh my god, I'm so sad, I wish we had more nights. And so is Lestat. Lestat really does not want to leave, and Marius doesn't want him to leave, and it's a sad departure, but it has to be done because Enkil will probably kill both of them. But Lestat is like, bro, he's keeping her prisoner because Akasha was clearly welcoming Lestat in a weird way, but Enkil just wasn't having it, and Lestat felt bad for her. He was like, bro, Akasha, like, I'm so sorry, he's keeping you prisoner. But Marius is like, bro, you can't be thinking this, he gon' get us, you need to leave. So eventually Lestat leaves. He goes to New Orleans, and he goes to New Orleans specifically because his dad has gone there. You know, the French are undergoing their revolution, blah blah blah. His whole family was killed. You know, his brothers, their wives, his nieces and nephews. His dad was the only one that survived, and people who worked for them helped vacate the father out of France, and they landed in New Orleans. So that's when Lestat was like, okay, we're gonna go to New Orleans. And then from there, we pretty much know the story, how he came across Louis, Claudia, etc., etc. Now, this is where the bullshit starts, because this is when we start getting into the territory of y'all got me fucked up. And by y'all, I mean the Lestat Sims, because yeah, let's get into it. So first of all, an interview with the vampire, right? We see the trial. And in this book, even though we don't have the full context of what's happening, we can clearly see that Lestat is not happy about what's going on, and he's not an active participant in what's going on, unlike the show. And this is why I say I can't even, like, it's so annoying because y'all have because I know that there's a lot more to be said about the trial on the show, i.e. the likelihood that Armand forced Lestat to participate in the trial. It's annoying because I would rather have found that out from the show, or if I just decided to read the books unprompted. But the fact that so many of y'all were in my comments like, oh, you're misunderstanding this character because you're too lazy to read a book, and you tell me you didn't read the book without telling me you didn't read the book, and the book. Lestat. It got to a point where it was like, okay, I need to read the book, because y'all were so impatient and so obsessed with this idea that you need to infantilize this character, and you can't have him be disliked in any capacity at all without using the books to defend him, that now it's like, I feel a little bit cheated in a way, because I feel like it would have been such a gut punch if I were to just watch season 3 and not be aware that Armand had any involvement as far as forcing Lestat to do the trial. I'm probably not articulating this well, but whatever. Anyway, in the book, Interview with the Vampire, it's clear even here without all the context that Lestat did not want to participate in the trial. In the Vampire Lestat, it is very clear with context that Lestat had no desire to participate in any trial. So why are y'all getting upset with me for watching a show that doesn't even faithfully follow the books to begin with? Why are you getting upset with me when I'm presented with the idea that Lestat willingly participated in the trial, when that was not the case in the books, but you constantly use the books as the crutch to rely on and defend his character, but the things that transpired in the books did not even transpire in the show. Hello? Like, it's actually ridiculous. And like, as I was reading, it was such an eye roll when I would reach moments like this, even down to the way you guys defend his relationship with Claudia and Louis. It's kind of baffling to me because here in this book, Lestat outright admits to being a piece of shit for what he did. And by what I mean by that is when he turned Claudia. Because yeah, the way it was described in the first book, how the way he turned Claudia, despicable. But that's not refuted here. Many things were, but not that specifically. The way he did it, that was never refuted. And he says here on page 501 in The Vampire Lestat, he says, "But you know, it was like playing the violin for Akasha. I wanted to do it. I wanted to see what would happen. I mean, with a beautiful little girl like that." So this man on a whim ruined this girl's life and destined her to be fucking burned alive. And that's just in the book. Mind you, I'm not mad at book Lestat. I understand book Lestat. But TV show Lestat, the way y'all defend him and use the books as your justification for defending him when even book Lestat admits to being a piece of shit, especially in that moment, bro, you got me fucked up. And here's the thing too, cause you know, obviously Claudia was fed up with his bullshit, and it was bullshit, and he knows it was bullshit, and she attempted to kill him, right? Listen what Lestat himself in the book has to say about that. "I don't blame her. It was the sort of thing I might have done myself." Interesting. So you mean to tell me even Lestat could recognize that he deserved what he got to at least some extent, but you bitches don't? Interesting. I find that highly amusing. I find that highly amusing. I'm not done with y'all. I am not done with y'all. My pages just fell out. Anyway, let's talk about one of the biggest moments that made me hate Lestat on the show. Okay, let's talk about that. The moment where he dropped Louis from the sky. I don't give a fuck what any of you say. You can't use this book to justify it because I've read the book now. You can't use that book to justify it. You simply cannot, because it doesn't even happen that way in the book. Armand drops Lestat from the sky in the book. And Armand dropped Lestat from the sky because he was just fucking bitter. He was bitter that Lestat had came back to Paris, but not for him. He was only back because, what was the reason? Oh yeah, this was after, you know, Louis and Claudia had did their shit to him. So he had went back to Paris, found Armand, and was like, "Hey yo, can I have some of your blood? Because, you know, you're a little bit more older than me, more powerful. Your blood is more powerful. Let me get some of that so I can heal more." And Armand's like, "Oh, you just came here to suckle my tit. You didn't want me. You wanted my blood." So he was like, "Fuck you." And then he dropped Lestat from the sky. That's how that went down in the book. But when I'm talking about the show, and I'm talking about the specific reasons I hate Lestat on the show, and I'm gonna give you a rundown of those reasons, because just in case y'all forget, because apparently Lestat in this book, even the stuff that he's absolved of, bro, I'm getting really passionate. Even the stuff that he's absolved of in this book aren't things that transpire in the show. In this book, the things that Louis accused him of, like when he toyed with innocent strangers and befriended them and then killed them, he was actually committed to this ideal that he would only kill the evildoer. So these people he was befriending were people who were doing heinous shit. They were killing people, thieves, whatever the case was. There has been no such case made, no such case presented in the show that we have all watched. And y'all like to harp on the fact that, oh, perspective. Yeah, but until we get the alternative perspective, we only have what we have. So why are you mad at someone judging what we have? Because it's literally all we have. The book and the show are not the same. So no, I'm not going to watch the show and then turn to the book and be like, well, here Lestat did this, and this, and he said this. No, that's stupid. You're stupid. No. So the things that Lestat does on the show, not allowing Louis to grieve the death of his brother, which literally happened the same day Lestat turned him. And we know it happened the same day Lestat turned him because Louis explicitly says that sunrise that he watched with his brother before Paul walked off that roof. Louis explicitly says as the narrator that was the last sunrise he ever saw. And so that means that the night that they had that funeral for Paul, he had just died earlier that day. And that very same night, Lestat turned Louis into a vampire. So he didn't allow Louis even a whole 24 hours to grieve his dead brother. He cornered him when he was at his lowest and manipulated him into accepting the dark gift. Literally a crippled, broken, pathetic man, like at his wit's end. You go to him and you offer him power and you think he's not gonna accept the power. It was literal coercion, bro. It was literal coercion, okay? And these are just the lesser of his evils. The constant cheating, the constant lying, the hypocrisy of getting mad at Louis for hooking up with someone when he was hooking up with Antoinette. And I know y'all like to say, oh, well, Louis' heart was dancing. He actually had feelings for that guy. Fuck off. He didn't. I don't actually believe Louis had feelings for that guy. He just got a little head and they left it at that. Like, Lestat was literally just being a dramatic little bitch because he's a fucking dramatic little bitch. I don't care. I don't care. And the jury's still out on if he had anything to do with Paul's death. Just because he says he didn't doesn't mean that he actually didn't. Since y'all want to talk about perspective so damn much all the goddamn time, I hope season 3 reveals that he has something to do with Paul's death so I can get on y'all ass again. So, oh my God, I have been sitting here for over an hour ranting about this shit. Okay, so what else am I talking about? Oh yeah, TV show Lestat weaponizes Claudia's sexual assault against her in order to keep her prisoner, and then he drops Louis from the fucking sky. Actually, it was the inverse. I think he dropped Louis from the sky first, and then when Louis is all healed up and they're all accepting him again, well, Claudia's not accepting him for shit, period. I love my queen. But when they're all living together again, Claudia's finally fed up and she's like, hey, yo, I'm getting out of here. We need to go. Louis is like, instilling his pick-me bullshit. He's like, no, I'm gonna stay with my white master Lestat. I love him so much, even though he fucking crippled me. He decides to stay. Claudia's like, okay, deuces, I'm gonna go. But Lestat won't let her go because he's like, well, if you go, Louis is gonna be sad and pathetic again. And I want him to be lively because I'm Lestat and everything needs to be my fucking way. So if you don't want to be graped again, or worse, if you don't want me to kill you, I suggest you stay right here. And that's the man y'all want me to root for. That's the man who you defend using this. This Lestat is not the same. This Lestat is not the same. I fuck with this Lestat. TV show Lestat can fucking choke and die. And it's interesting because I've seen like quite a few comments say that book Lestat is in fact worse than TV show Lestat. And I guess just by the nature of me not having read the other entries in this franchise yet, that I'm just unaware of that. I don't know how Lestat becomes worse in the future. I have to read on to discover it, but if it's true that he's actually worse in the books, then y'all really have no excuse. And if I do get to the point where I read all of those books, I'm gonna be on y'all ass so heavy. Belt to ass. Belt to motherfucking ass, because y'all literally don't make sense. You don't make sense. Anyway, all in all, I read the book, and now you can no longer hold that over my head. You can't sit here and say, I don't understand the character because I haven't read the book. Because the books are fucking irrelevant when it comes to the show. Period. Period. And yes, I am actually very, very excited to watch season 3. Very excited to watch season 3. Even with the vile TV show Lestat, that bitch. I'm very excited. He's a very compelling character. What I don't want them to do, I really don't want them to do this. I don't want them to retcon everything Louis has told us. I feel like that would be a poor writing decision and it would be a disservice to the show itself. Maybe rearrange some things, take some things away, sure. If you guys want to lean so heavily into the perspective thing, which wasn't even that prevalent from what I've read, like it wasn't as grandiose as they're making it in the show. But if you want to do that, sure. But like, don't take away everything, because if you do that, it's like, okay, so what was season 1 and 2 for then? You know, I just feel like that would be a poor writing choice. I hope we find out more despicable things about Lestat in season 3, and I hope maybe we uncover some more layers of his humanity, for lack of better words, okay? Those are my hopes for season 3. But let's talk about the end of this book real quick, because it turned into a fucking action movie out of nowhere. So, long story short, 1984, 1985, Lestat is now in a rock band, and you know, his story, his autobiography is out there, just like Louis' autobiography is out there. So the world is, you know, consuming media about the vampires, and the vampires around the world, you know, they're like, oh, y'all got us fucked up. So, you know, they come pursue Lestat at a concert that he's performing at with his band. And, you know, Louis there, Armand is somewhere fucking off, who cares? And it's electric, you know, he's feeding off the energy of the crowd, you know, he's playing his music, he's singing his songs. It's all well and good. And, you know, in the crowd, he can see, mind you, it's like 15,000 people, but he can see vampires, you know, here and there watching the show. And he's like, yeah, I got my audience, bitch. Vampires, make yourselves known. Anyway, so at the end of the show, him and Louis are trying to escape, because obviously they know that the vampires are going to be coming after them. And like 3 vampires pop up, and obviously their intention is to kill them, because it's like, you know, stupid vampire tradition shit. They're like, nobody can know about us. You're out there, you know, gallivanting. Is that the word? Gallivanting? I like how it sounds. I'm gonna use it. You're out there gallivanting and letting people know that we exist in the world, and you're burying your fangs on stage and blah, 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 blah. So yeah, that's why they want to kill them. They're like, you need to die. So they pull out sides and shit, and then all of a sudden, boom, they bursting into flames. And we like, oh shit. Well, I was like, oh shit. But also Lestat and Louis were like, oh shit. And then, you know, yeah, they're just bursting into flames. And it was like, oh my God, what's going on? And then, you know, a car door burst open, and it's fucking Gabrielle. And she's like, get in the fucking car, you two. We're going driving. And so Louis and Lestat clamber into the car, and you know, Gabrielle's, you know, pedal to the meddling. Mind you, she and Lestat haven't seen each other in like 200 fucking years. She just came to, you know, see the show because it's a very big thing. This is the first time in vampire history where something like this is being done, because Lestat is just that guy. And he's like, yeah, I run this shit. I want everyone to love me. I want everyone to hate me. I want to be the outsider. Why not? That's his attitude. They're escaping, and they see behind them that there's a fucking what's it called, like a souped up vampire vehicle coming after them, like crazy shit, bro. And there's like a group of vampires in there chasing them, and then so it's a high speed chase on the freeway, and then eventually the vampire car catches up with them, smashes them in the rear. The car goes flying, flips over, you know, tumbles, and it fucking explodes. This is a Michael Bay film now. You know, Louis manages to escape, and they're all like over the railing or whatever into this grass field. The rest of the vampires are coming over the field to come confront them. Mind you, Lestat thinks Marius is the one who was setting the vampires on fire with his mind. He was like, bro, we shouldn't have left Marius. We should have stayed in that area so he could do what he needed to do and get rid of all these other vampires. But then it happens again. The vampire who's about to swing on them bursts into flames again. And that makes the rest of the vampires run away. And it was like, oh my God, oh my God. And at this point, I was already suspecting that it wasn't fucking Marius. Later on, Louis, Lestat, and Gabrielle are discussing it, and they're like, no, that's not Marius. It's not Marius. The feeling that they got from this being, well, Louis and Gabrielle, the feeling that they got from the being was very savage, very uncivilized, and that was like the opposite of Marius. So they already know it wasn't him. And at that point, I was certain it was Akasha. I was like, oh, Akasha is helping Lestat. So anyway, we're at the end of the story. Lestat's pondering, you know, the fact that it wasn't Marius who saved them from the vampires. Louis and Gabrielle have gone off to their crypts or whatever because, you know, daylight's rising. And then Lestat's like, okay, I'm getting tired. The sun's rising. I need to go to my crypt too. So he dashes to his crypt. He starts to go to bed, and like it comes to him. It's like Akasha, like it was her. It was her. Because he reaches out to Marius, and Marius is like trying to warn him from wherever he's at, you know, somewhere in a snowy mountain or something. Marius is trying to signal Lestat like, hey, we're all in danger. She's loose. She knows what's happening with you. It's dangerous. She's loose. She's loose. Code red, code red, code red. And Lestat's like, oh my God, she's free. And as he's drifting off, she's there. She's there in the room with him, lulling him to sleep. And the book ends. Yep. So definitely reading Queen of the Damned. My thing is though, I don't know if I want to do a movie reaction in tandem with it because like I kind of want to, right? But I feel like that movie is mad corny. And I know Aaliyah plays Queen of the Damned in that movie, but I just feel like maybe it's just like maybe it's a movie that's so bad it's a good. Because I've never actually seen it. But I do remember being a child and always seeing the cover art for that movie, like, everywhere. But yeah, guys, that ending was epic. I don't know, like, it literally just turned into an action movie out of nowhere. And, like, I enjoyed those final pages, let me tell you, I did. So yes, Marius' story and the final scene, the little chase scene, high-speed car chase, thoroughly enjoyed those scenes. I do feel for Lestat. I do see him in a much better light, but only, again, I reiterate, only the book version of him, okay? The TV show version of him can choke as far as I'm concerned. For now, it may change into the future. It can change into the future. And that's what y'all need to understand. It can change. But as of right now, fuck that hoe. Bye.